Good day and welcome back to Nafe Horsemanship. Today I want to talk about saddle fit. As I said a long time ago, a lot of the videos I want to do are going to be based on things in my personal life, personal experiences. Well, and this would be one of them. This horse here is half Arabian. And, well, apparently she has inherited the Arabian back shape, which has created significant problems. Now, we've been riding her off and on for years, and we did at one time have a saddle we definitely knew didn't fit well. Later on we had another one, but we only used a blanket under it. This one we actually used a saddle pad under, but I took the pad out, started taking a closer look, and I realized this thing doesn't even come close to fitting right on her. Now it may actually be short enough, although it's sitting a little far forward right now, but she actually needs an Arabian saddle. And I'll talk about, some of the differences, because these are things you need to be aware of, because apparently the Arabian saddles, from what I've read, are not only used on just Arabians, but other horses with peculiar shaped backs, Morgans being one. And not all Arabians are shaped like this one, but she is very typical Arabian shape. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that we discovered when we started taking a closer look. This particular saddle has got a fairly wide gullet, which, by the way, you can't actually measure them accurately according to one saddle maker once the saddle is finished, because with all the extra layers of leather and stuff on them, it alters your dimensions. You can't get an accurate measurement, but as far as I can tell, this is pretty much as wide as you can get. Now, the rule of thumb is that you should have 2 fingers of room between the withers and the, well, I can just about get my whole hand in there. Obviously, it's sitting too high, even with the widest gullet that you can get. We need an extra wide. One of the characteristics of an Arabian saddle. Another thing we started noticing when we looked really close is the angle here is not good. And if you throw the saddle pad in, it gets even worse. But the Arabian has a slightly lower angle, so instead of sitting like that, they're a little more like that. I'm exaggerating, but that shows you the difference. That's a normal saddle. That's what this is. Her back is more like that. She needs a lower angle. And the other thing about them that you probably won't notice, but this area in here is actually slightly rounded. It's not fairly straight down as this saddle would be, and as most horses. Now, I'm not getting rid of this saddle. It doesn't fit her worth a crap. It's terrible on her, but it actually fits my quarter horse perfectly. So I'm definitely not getting rid of this one, but I am going to have to get another saddle for her, because she happens to also be a very, very sensitive horse, and I'm thinking that, a little bit of a bad fit is probably a big deal to her. So, and I kind of like her, so we're going to do the best we can. We're going to have to go buy another saddle. We're actually having a hard time finding one, but I know they make them. I used to own one. Wish I still had it, but, back to the shoulder here. It's actually slightly rounded. You don't notice it to look at it, but if you actually put a straight edge on there, it'll rock. You'll notice that this is actually rounded. And so, one more thing, that a straight saddle is not going to displace weight, which is one of the functions of a saddle. It's intended to displace your weight. Now, to determine whether or not a saddle fits well, there's 2 ways of doing it. And the way I just showed you is with just a saddle by itself sitting on the horse. You can see a little better. But if you got a horse that, the saddle fits well enough that you can get away with riding it and you can get a good sweat pattern on the back, then pull the saddle and saddle pad off. And you can see if you get a fairly even pattern, it's fairly sweaty, the sweat is even all over, that's a fairly good fit. If you got wet and dry patches, not a good fit. So with the Arabian saddles, extra wide gullet, the bars are at a lower angle, they're also slightly curved instead of straight, and they also have a shorter skirt on them, because I haven't counted hers, so I'm not sure about this one, but one of the characteristics of the Arabian breed, and it is exclusive to them, but not all of them have it, is they actually have one less vertebrae in the back and one less rib, so their back is shorter, and as a result, they need a saddle with a shorter skirt on it, so it doesn't interfere with the hips when they're turning, and it's more comfortable for them. So there's actually a dimension, I believe it was 27 inches total length, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Most of them you'll actually find very obvious. The skirt is actually rounded. It almost matches the seat. The cantle on the back of the seat will be curved pretty much the same as that. Don't think that if you see that, that is an Arabian saddle, though, because some barrel saddles are also made like that, because I'm just assuming that because barrel horses turn a lot of sharp corners, they need to have lots of flexibility and movement. They don't need a skirt interfering with their hips. Okay, so those are things that you can watch for. Take a good close look. Like I said, the rule of thumb is 2 inches between the withers and the top of the gullet there. And well, obviously this one's not fitting right on her. My other horse, perfect, absolutely perfect. But I'm going to show you some other things too in just a second here. Now, I had mentioned before in another video how you had to be very careful with the saddle pad, because it can actually affect the fit of your saddle, have a significant effect. And oh, by the way, when you go to stores, don't assume that the people there know what they're talking about. I've been given some very bad advice that fortunately I knew enough not to take, including things like, oh, just get more pad, it'll be fine, you can use that saddle. No, I can't, because this actually makes the problem worse, and that's what I want to talk about. You see, this one looks a little thicker than it is, but it's still, I'm not sure what the dimension on this one is. I think it's a 5/8, but you know, say even if it was a 1/2 inch, if you get a 1/2 inch on each side, you have effectively narrowed your gullet by a full inch. So your saddle pad can actually really affect the fit of your saddle on the horse. So take that into consideration when you do a fitting, when you have the saddle sitting on the horse by itself without the pad, like I just did. You also have to consider what's going to happen when you put the pad underneath. And I think for her, for my next one, my last saddle I used on her, I had just a blanket under it, and I'm thinking for her, I'm going to go for a thinner pad. I'm going to keep this one. I like this pad. It's a good pad. But I think for her, I'm going to actually use a thinner one just to ensure that the saddle's going to sit down a little lower and fit a little better on her. It will also fit a little more securely as well. So a couple things to watch out for. And when you're putting a saddle on your horse, I feel really bad about it, because I've had this horse for quite a few years and I never noticed just how bad that saddle fit. Mind you, I also haven't ridden her for a while, and the last one I had was definitely better than the first one I had on her, and I was using a very thin pad. Like I said, I was using just a blanket, so that probably helped. But this one, with a thicker pad on it, made all of our problems that much worse. I took a good look because I want to start riding her again, and I thought, I want to make sure this saddle's comfortable on her, because, like I said, she's my friend. I want to make the experience as good as possible. Riding is not a completely natural thing to begin with. So I think we owe it to the horse to try and make the experience as good as we can, reduce the negative, because honestly, if a horse has a choice, I'd rather just be hanging out in the pasture, eating hay and hanging out with their buddies. So riding isn't their first choice. But if we are going to ride them, it's our responsibility to make sure that that experience is as positive as we can make it. Cause as little discomfort as possible. So if I have to go out and buy a new saddle, fit her properly, that's okay. We're going to do that. But I just thought I'd point that out. We have, you know, I feel bad that for years I didn't realize how bad the saddle fit on her, because she does in fact have all the traits of an Arabian. She's got the wider withers, a lower angle, slightly rounded, and well, we assume she's going to need the shorter skirt. That can't hurt anyhow. So, you know, those are some things to watch out for. Things like bridging. If the saddle is bridging on you, that you're not going to be able to tell just setting on. That's something you're going to find more with a good ride and work up a sweat under the saddle. And then you can see the wet and dry spots. And if it's, you know, wet all the way through, you're doing good. If you got a dry spot in the middle, you probably got bridging happening, which is where the saddle actually is putting weight there and not in the middle. You don't want that. Like I said, the idea of a saddle is primarily other than keeping you from falling off like me, is, you know, to displace your weight as much as possible. So you want as much contact area as possible on the horse. So, but there are still some things, like I said, you know, you can set it on the horse and take a good look at it, and you can see with a close examination that, sometimes, yeah, it's not such a good fit after all. Okay, have a good day.